It was a gray Saturday afternoon when I found myself in the old library on the edge of town. The weather outside was dreary, a persistent drizzle casting a somber mood over the streets, making the library seem like a warm refuge from the chill. I was there to work on a research project for my history class, a mundane task that promised nothing more than hours of scrolling through dusty microfilms and thumbing through aged volumes. The library itself was a relic of a different era, a grand building with sweeping arches and towering bookshelves that seemed to touch the sky. The air was thick with the smell of aged paper and musty leather, a scent I found oddly comforting. The librarian, a quiet woman with gray hair tied in a bun, nodded at me as I entered, her eyes briefly meeting mine before returning to the book she was cataloging. I settled into a corner near the back, where the stacks were less frequented, and began my search. The sound of rain pattering against the windows provided a soothing backdrop, and I lost myself in the rhythm of turning pages and scribbling notes. Hours passed unnoticed until the overhead lights flickered briefly, a minor anomaly I dismissed as an electrical hiccup. As evening approached, the library grew quieter, the few patrons that had been there earlier having drifted away. I decided to take a break, stretching my legs and wandering through the labyrinth of bookshelves. It was then that I noticed something peculiar. A faint humming sound, barely audible, seemed to emanate from the farthest corner of the library. Intrigued, I followed the sound, my footsteps echoing softly against the polished wood floors. The humming grew slightly louder as I approached a section marked Local History. The shelves here were crammed with old maps and dusty tomes chronicling the town's past. Yet, the sound seemed to come from beyond, as though luring me further into the shadows. I hesitated, a shiver of unease prickling my skin. But curiosity got the better of me. As I moved deeper into the stacks, I discovered a door I had never noticed before, tucked away in a dim alcove. It was an unassuming wooden door, its surface scarred with age and neglect. A brass plaque above it read, "Restricted." I knew I shouldn't, but an inexplicable compulsion urged me onward. I reached for the handle, hesitating only briefly before giving it a tentative turn. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The humming was louder now, resonating from below, an eerie melody that tugged at the edges of my consciousness. With each step, the air grew colder, and an unsettling feeling settled in my stomach. The staircase seemed to spiral endlessly downward, and I lost all sense of time. Finally, I reached the bottom, where a dimly lit corridor stretched before me. The walls were lined with shelves crammed with ancient, decaying books, their spines cracked and titles faded beyond recognition. The humming was all around me now, a dissonant chorus that made my head throb. I found myself drawn to a particular book, its cover a deep green that seemed to pulse faintly under the flickering light. Without thinking, I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the rough leather surface. As I opened the book, a gust of icy wind swept through the corridor, extinguishing the light. I was plunged into darkness, the humming reaching a deafening crescendo. Panic surged through me, and I dropped the book, its pages fluttering wildly before it hit the floor with a resounding thud. In the pitch black, I felt something shift, an almost imperceptible change in the air. It was as though the darkness itself was alive, watching me, its presence oppressive and malevolent. My heart raced, and I backed away, desperate to find the staircase and escape this nightmare. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, each step I took echoing into infinity. The darkness was suffocating, and I stumbled blindly, my hands groping along the walls for any sign of the stairs. The humming was inside my head now, a relentless drone that threatened to drive me mad. Finally, I felt the edge of the first step beneath my foot and scrambled upward, the sound of my own ragged breaths mingling with the haunting melody. It felt like an eternity before I burst through the door at the top, collapsing onto the library floor, gasping for air. The library was silent, the lights steady once more. I lay there for a moment, trembling, trying to make sense of what had happened. The humming had ceased, leaving only the soft patter of rain against the windows. I glanced toward the alcove, half expecting to see the door standing ajar. but it was gone, as though it had never existed. The shelves bore no trace of the forbidden corridor or the mysterious book that had ensnared me. Shakily, I gathered my things and left the library, the librarian watching me with a curious expression as I hurried past. Outside, the rain had stopped, and a chill wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a faint, lingering hum. I never returned to that library, nor did I speak of what I had experienced. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear the humming again, a distant echo that sends chills down my spine, a reminder that the darkness is never far away, lurking just beyond the edge of the known world, waiting to be unleashed by a curious hand